Fort Mill and Indian Land, South Carolina, 15 minutes apart, and buyers lump them together. But one of these could cost you $7,000 more a year in property taxes. And I promise you, it's not the one you think. And stick around because at the end, I'm telling you exactly who should buy in each one. And one of these answers is going to surprise you. I'm Evie DeJesus, your realtor in the Carolinas with eXp Realty. If you're moving to the Carolinas, hit that subscribe button. Now let's jump right into it. So here's the deal. A few of you have asked me about Fort Mill and Indian Land after my Lake Norman versus Lake Wylie video. I linked it up in the corner. Fort Mill and Indian Land are both just over the South Carolina line, both loaded with new construction, both pulling relocation buyers out of Charlotte, New York, New Jersey, and Florida like a magnet. Same commute corridor, and get this. They even share a Costco now. The brand new Costco on Highway 521 is technically Indian Land, but it's only about 5 miles from downtown Fort Mill. And York County doesn't even have one. But here's where it gets interesting. They're in two completely different counties with two completely different tax structures. And one of them isn't even technically a town. Indian Land is unincorporated Lancaster County. There's no Indian Land City Hall. There's no mayor of Indian Land. It's a community, not a municipality. Now, Fort Mill is an actual incorporated town in York County with a real downtown that's been there since the 1800s. So why does that matter to your wallet? Hold that thought. Because first, let's look at what the market's actually doing right now. For May 2026, the median sale price in Fort Mill is running between $489,000 and $499,000. Indian Land higher between $500,000 and $520,000. Yeah, you heard that right. Indian Land, the cheaper alternative everybody talks about, is actually selling at a higher median price than Fort Mill right now. Let that sink in. Now, the price per square foot is roughly $222 in both markets. So the median gap is really about Indian Land selling bigger, newer homes, not more expensive dirt. Now, here's where the two markets split personalities. Days on market, Fort Mill homes are moving in as little as 16 days on the fast end and up to 41 days. Indian Land is sitting at about 48 days median. Therefore, if you're a buyer in Indian Land, you've got breathing room. You got time to negotiate. You got time to think, maybe even time to eat dinner before writing an offer. In Fort Mill, you blink and it's pending. Inventory tells the same story. Fort Mill has around 622 active listings, about 2.3 months of supply, while Indian Land is holding between 340 and 415 listings. Both are still sellers' markets under 3 months of supply, but the pressure is not equal. Quick question for you. If you're shopping right now, which matters more to you? Negotiating room or an established downtown? Drop it in the comments. I'm nosy. I'm curious. I want to know. So now for the interesting part, the taxes. South Carolina taxes your home based on how you use it. Primary residence you live in, you're assessed at 4%. Rental, second home, investment property, you're looking at 6%. And you lose the school operating tax exemption. That difference is everything. So listen closely. South Carolina measures property taxes in something called mills. I know that word probably means nothing to you. So here's my 10-second breakdown. 1 mil equals 0.001, 1/10 of a penny. The county takes your home's value, multiplies it by that assessment ratio, either the 4% or the 6%, and then multiplies that by the millage rate. That's your tax bill. Higher millage, higher bill. Very simple. So with that in mind, Fort Mill sits in your county tax district 4, 237.2 mills for owner-occupied land. Indian Land in Lancaster District 4, 162.2 mills. Let me show you what that means in dollars. Let's take a $500,000 primary residence. In Fort Mill, you're looking at roughly $4,744 a year. Same house in Indian Land, that's about $3,244. That's $1,500 a year staying in your pocket just for buying on the other side of the county line. Over a decade, that's $15,000. That could be a car, an upgraded kitchen, or a lot of date nights. But And this is a big but. Flip that same $500,000 house to non-owner occupied and everything changes. Fort Mill at 6% rate is 573.8 mils, roughly 17,214 a year. Indian land is 338.2 mils, about 10,146. That's over a $7,000 gap every single year. Therefore, if you're an investor or buying a second home, this isn't a preference conversation. It's a math conversation, and the math is screaming. So Indian land wins the tax fight. Case closed, right? Not so fast. Because both counties just changed the rules, and what happened in June could shift this whole picture. June 2026, the Fort Mill School District approved a 10.5 mil increase to keep up with growth and state budget shortfalls. It was offset by a 2 mil cut in debt service. So the net damage is 8.5 mils. Now, before Fort Mill homeowners panic, if you live in your home, you're exempt from school operating millage. So this hits lands mostly on rentals, second homes, and commercial property. Translation, Fort Mill just got even more expensive for investors, while primary residence owners mostly dodge it. Meanwhile, in Lancaster County, the council passed a 1 mil increase, bringing the county base to about 93.6 mils. Small, but here's the thing, nobody's watching. Indian land residents also pay a separate fire fee through the Indian Land Consolidated Fire Protection District, and the county has been weighing how to fund expanding fire services. More millage or a flat pre-structure fee? Why should you care? Because Indian land's explosive growth is exactly why that question is on the table. Fort Mill built its roads, schools, and services decades ago. That bill's already been paid. Indian land is still building all of that right now. The population got there before the infrastructure did, and somebody's got to fund the catch up. Therefore, when you compare these two towns, you're not just comparing today's tax bill, you're comparing where each tax bill is headed. So here's my honest breakdown. Fort Mill makes sense if you want an established town, a walkable main street, mature infrastructure, a market where your resale moves in 16 to 41 days, and you're buying a primary residence. So the new school millage barely touches you. You'll pay about $1,500 more a year in taxes than Indian land, but you're buying into a finished product. Indian land makes sense if you want maximum house for the money in a newer build. You like 48 days of negotiating leverage instead of a bidding war. Or if you're an investor or a second home buyer, because that $7,000 annual tax gap at the 6% rate is the single biggest number in this entire video. But go in with eyes open. You're betting on a community that's still under construction. Fire fees and infrastructure funding are open questions, and the community is real. So the town that could cost you $7,000 more a year, it's Fort Mill. The one everybody assumes is the safe pick. But here's the nuance. That $7,000 gap is the investor and second home number. If you buy that same Fort Mill house as your primary residence, the gap shrinks to about $1,500 a year. Still more than Indian land, but a completely different conversation. That's the whole game in South Carolina. It's not where you buy, it's how you buy. And here's one more thing most out-of-state buyers learn the hard way. That 4% owner-occupied rate, that's not automatic. You have to apply for the legal residence exemption with the county after you close. And until you do, you are billed at 6%. If you miss that step and your first tax bill, it'll ruin your whole week. So whichever side of the county line you land on, make sure the application gets filed. Now, if you're relocating to Charlotte, Fort Mill, or Indian land, and you're not already working with an agent, call me or text me at the number on the stream, or grab a time on my calendar. The link is in the description, and I have also linked it in the comments. I'm Evie DeJesus, and I will see you in the next video. Later.